Hey, you're tuned in to Live at 5. And before we jump into today's guest, I just want to remind you that this show is only possible because of the generosity and support of amazing people like you. Continue to support us by subscribing to this YouTube channel, clicking the link to donations and merchandise in the bio below, and by spreading the word about our shows. Thanks again, and enjoy. Hello there. We are live at 5 on this Wednesday afternoon, and we hope that you're having a good day. We have a great show lined up today with our special guest, Pete Horsfall. But before we do that, we are also joined by our producer, Darcy O'Connor, up in Clapton. How are you, Darcy?
Hi, G. Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I brought this mug out for you because I know.
Oh, I do like
Darcy and I have a mug off every morning.
Which one's this? Can you give us a bit of a backstory into your mug? Like, where did you and your mug first meet? When was the first time that you drank from your mug?
Well, that's pretty personal stuff, Darcy.
Okay.
I didn't really expect for me to be revealing my mug love on YouTube, but if you must know, this mug love began at a service area on the New York Thruway, and we were driving up to Saratoga, and I saw this mug that said New York City on it, and I thought I would buy it for my girlfriend because I thought she'd really like it, and then I fell in love with it, and that was a problem.
Subsequently out of love with your girlfriend?
Well, that was more of the thing where it never quite made it into the gift, category. It kind of went right into my morning routine. Mm-hmm. But if you could see on here, it has there's a baseball bat with a baseball, a pretzel.
Oh, very
dog.
New York.
Yeah, it's very.
Is Kramer on there?
He was removed from this edition. Yeah, Kramer used to be on the New York mug, and then after the incident, he was erased. So anyway, that's a good beverage holder. But enough about mugs. We're gonna jump right into some music, and this is something that we dug out today that was a real thrill to watch again, and it's a Big Four concert from I think 2014 or 2013, well before the one we played for Archive at 5 last week, and it was the first time we played on Friday night as music night on BBC Radio 2, and it was kind of an electric experience for all of us. And so this is Smitty's Big Four featuring Pete Horsfall on That's a Plenty.
It's said that one of the greatest gifts America has given to the world is jazz music. And the beginnings of jazz can be traced back to one of the planet's most influential musical cities, New Orleans. Some call it Dixieland, some call it hot jazz, some simply call it early jazz. In any event, it's the style of music that was played by the fathers of jazz. Among them, Sidney Bechet and Louis Armstrong, King Oliver and Jelly Roll Morton. All of them heroes to our guest band this evening, Smitty's Big Four. Please welcome them back with a Lou Pollack tune called That's a Plenty.
And we are back live at 5, and we're joined by Pete Horsfall, who is anxious to show off his mug as well. Let's see it, Pete.
Yeah. How's it going?
Awesome. Yeah.
Look at that. Beautiful.
Yeah. Here's to you.
Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers to you.
So what a blast from the past to see that video, huh?
Yeah, I can't believe it's whatever you said 7 years ago or 6 years ago or something.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember that day? You remember? I feel like I remember it really.
I remember like being backstage and stuff. Yeah, but apart from that, and I remember playing, but apart from that, I don't remember anything else. Oh, do you remember? Do you remember it?
I just remember stressing out beforehand and just
Okay.
playing my parts over and over again, which made
Right.
no difference, of course. It
No.
never does.
What was the context?
Sounds pretty good. It's not too bad, is it?
Yeah. I was impressed with that band. But I mean, since that concert, how many thousands of gigs do you think we've done together? Probably 2,000, something like
Over
that.
7 years. Well, but yeah, well, it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot.
It's a lot. Fair few. So it's great that you could join us today. It's a real pleasure to always to talk about music with you. And I kind of wanted to get into just in that video alone, the way that you kind of the way that you lead and you play in that kind of group is really particular, and I know that you've spent a lot of time thinking about that. So can you kind of outline what you think about when you play in an ensemble, and who your kind of inspirations are on trumpet?
Yeah, well, it was when I started playing, more. How do I say this? Older styles, I suppose, of jazz. It was a kind of revelation to me that I had certain things that I should work on as a trumpet player, and it was thought within that music that I should be doing, and that didn't involve just playing the stuff I'd worked on at home, or other things that you might be thinking about in other musical settings. But in these specific musical settings, that the trumpet first of all had to lead with a strong melody, and it was upon the trumpet player to kind of make the arrangement on stage. So suddenly you're sort of an arranger on stage as well. So I had a number of responsibilities that are kind of bestowed upon you by the music. So that's always one thing I was really excited about, still excited about, in that it gave me certain jobs to do, and maybe stopped me worrying necessarily all the time about am I sounding the best that I can possibly sound? Was my solo the best solo that I could have played? How good do I feel about that, or how bad do I feel about that?
Yeah, it's much more of an ensemble kind of.
It's more of a functional job,
right?
Right. It's
yeah.
like the nearest thing to making art in a more functional way, as in here's a set of tasks that you have to fulfill, but hopefully and the idea obviously is with great style and finesse and all the rest of it, if you can.
Yeah, right. Right.
But as a basic foundation, here's some things you have to do, and it's know the melody, play it strongly, make variations, but always with the idea that the other people in the ensemble are going to have to fit around you. Be aware of who the next soloist is. If they don't know, tell them in a non-verbal way normally, and all sorts of other little things like that. So yeah.
So can you kind of outline what I mean? So Pete runs a band called Basin Street Brawlers. So let's say that the Brawlers are basically the archetypal kind of Chicago jazz lineup. Sometimes you don't necessarily use a full rhythm section, but there's plenty of precedent for the instrumentation of that band. So can you kind of tell people, in terms of the role that you just described for yourself, what that looks like in terms of instrumentation, and how that would kind of manifest itself on stage?
Yeah, so that group, the Basin Street Brawlers, but also playing with Smitty's in certain respects, and depending what repertoire we're playing stuff. Um, Often it'll be, I suppose it all comes out of playing with a three front line, which means obviously the trumpet, and then most often a trombone as the tenor voice, and a clarinet, which I suppose you would call, what would you call it, like a descant, screech whistle.
Screech whistle. Yes, soprano voice. Yeah.
But like a high voice, a melody voice in the middle, that's me, and a tenor voice. And yeah, in that group, there's no, well, mostly there's no drums and no bass, so it's piano and guitar, and that's very much what I was saying. It's I'll be playing the melody, and instead of thinking in my mind about how artistic or unartistic I'm being at that particular time, I'll be coming to the end of playing the melody to this song that I've learned, and I'll be thinking, what makes most sense for a solo here? Who's going to take the first solo?
Musically, what makes most sense? Right.
Absolutely, yeah. So it might have been, yeah, and it depends if it's a slow song, if it's a ballad, if it's a high energy song. Sometimes it depends on the specific qualities that a certain musician brings to a group. So, for instance, I know that certain players who are magnificent all-round players perform better at high tempos.
Right.
So Giacomo, for instance, is very dependable at higher tempos. And I know that if we're playing something that's really, really rocking at a pace, then I'll be thinking, should I give this to Malcolm Earl Smith on the trombone, who is a very fine trombone player and will play very well at high speeds, but then again, he does play the trombone. They've only got a slide.
Right.
And you've got 1,000 buttons, on the clarinet or the saxophone, so it's easy, right?
Yeah.
Not really, but
6,000 buttons.
6,000 exactly, but
10,000 buttons.
Yeah, all right. So I'll be thinking, who does it make sense to solo here, or if it's on in another setting, it might be a ballad, and I'll be thinking, this might be a nice time to feature the trombone on the first solo, for instance. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into another piece of music, and this is Pete playing along with a record of Bobby Hackett, who's one of the best kind of exponents of the Chicago style. Just really beautiful trumpet player. I think it was from Boston. Isn't that true?
Okay.
From Boston.
I don't know. This is, by the way, this is just a video of me during this virus pandemic. I don't generally tend to put out videos of me just playing in my bedroom, but there's not much choice now, is there?
Sounded good to me. No.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying, the melody is paramount with somebody like Bobby Hackett, amazing improviser. And for those of you who have asked questions in the past about practicing, we've reiterated a lot of times that one of the best ways to practice is to play along with records. So check out how Pete does that with this tune. This is called "It's Wonderful."
said
back
that
live at the 5 with Pete Horsfall, who apparently can hear a woman singing to him through
It's
his
like
headphones.
there's like a full folk record happening
Uh,
somewhere on the computer.
well,
I can't get it
luckily,
to stop.
hearing folk music in your head is not one of the signs of the virus. So we are you look fine.
Great.
So outline for people what you're doing there, you know, with that, and how you practice along with records, if that's something that you do.
Well, there's definitely people out there that are serious transcribers and take down thousands of whole solos and they'll write them out and everything. And I'm definitely not one of those people, but I do transcribe, but maybe not in that way. I tend to pick what I tend to do is pick a phrase from a record, like something Bobby Hackett plays, some particular line, and try and work out first of all how to play it, but also secondly why it sounds good. You know, what note is he playing on that specific chord that makes it sound that way? It's like, can I learn how to target that note, for instance?
Right.
So I'll do something like that, or and I mean, it's just, I mean, there's certain players who really seem to me to lend themselves. But so many players, most players, let's say, but like in the trumpet world, like Louis Armstrong and Bobby Hackett, they just have certain phrases they play in different. But and or like even someone like Charlie Parker, but they'll play certain phrases in certain different contexts, and they'll reshape the same phrase and put it here and put it there. So it actually learning certain lines, it really in a way where you don't just churn them out, but you've kind of worked out why they sound good. You can manipulate them and just use them. I suppose that's the start of improvising, isn't it? I
Yeah,
suppose that's the start of the process.
absolutely.
And the other thing, I suppose, on that video, if I'm thinking of the right one, is practicing accompanying people, which is such an art. And Bobby Hackett was a great one of the great accompanists. He also played guitar in the Glenn Miller band. I don't know whether you knew that.
I had no idea.
As
That's amazing.
a
What?
he had like chops problems sometimes. You know, some trumpet players get problems
Wow.
with their embouchure and stuff over the years. And when he had years off or they needed a dep, he would play guitar. Yeah, which makes sense to me because the way he plays trumpet, it's so he's really not only does he play melodies beautifully, but he really it's clear that he knows every chord that's
Yeah.
happening underneath. You know, in a very rational,
Well, he plays
some kind of.
perfectly in time as well. I mean, it's
Mm,
all kind of
that's
so
true. That's
so
true.
metered.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing that I get from him is that, like you
Mm,
said, the harmony is so clear. It's like the solo line that he'll play. Um, he never skates over the harmony of the song. It's always just right within, uh,
exactly.
the melody or the harmony. And his articulation is really smooth. And I wanted you to talk for a minute about how you kind of think about articulating. We had a long discussion with Eddie Barbash about double tonguing and different things, and I know that on trumpet it's different. So what do you kind of think about there?
I think articulation. Uh, I have spent, and I continue to spend a lot of time getting it together. And I really think it's one of those things that especially music colleges and universities and stuff, and teaching ourselves, it tends to be easier to teach ourselves the things that are quantifiable. So there's so many notes in a scale. We can divide it these things up in certain ways, and so you can kind of deliver information in a rational way and learn it like that. It's kind of easily digestible. And I'd say probably articulation is not one of those things. um, and that's what makes it so difficult because um, it's not like you can say, well, just learn it this way and then just do that, because it's such a it tends to be such a how do you say that, like a what's a piece of art where you like a mosaic or a montage or something of
Okay.
different
Right.
techniques used um, in and amongst each other. So, for instance, so articulation on the trumpet, I'd say, for instance, some of the great masters of that are the bebop players. someone like Clifford Brown or Donald Byrd, Art Farmer, people like that.
Well,
And
you were
those
saying, they make a different sound, like there's a different technique for that. That's like doodle tonguing, isn't it? That's kind of
some of them do that, not all of them.
how do you do that?
Is so it's supposed to be one of those things where the description of the thing is in the name of it. So doodle, it's supposed to be doodle 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 doodle, but actually it's more like tuddle tuddle, tuddll, tuddle 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 tuddle.
Everybody do that at home now. 1, 2, 3. Tuddle, 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 tuddle. Reminds me of the Swedish chef from the Muppets going tortla, tortla, tortla.
There you go.
Nobody knows where I'm coming from.
No,
I'll have something for my mug now.
Clark Terry was, the greatest at that by a country mile, actually, really. But other, I'd say, most modern trumpet players come out of that school, as in have taken that. Someone like Alex Ipiagin, or my teacher at college was Gerard Presenza. Someone like that have taken certain elements of bebop articulation in trumpet playing and taken that forward and do their own thing with it. But what I've become interested in is other ways of articulating, which are not like lost arts, but have just been superseded in one way or another, just fashion. So people like Louis Armstrong or Bobby Hackett or Wild Bill Davidson have a different set, or Henry Red Allen have a different set of articulations that they use and developed, and it gives their playing a certain character. So I think Louis Armstrong, for instance, a lot of single tonguing, which the classical players are really the masters of that, but also certain. And again, it's very difficult to quantify all this. You can't say exactly what someone's doing, because you're talking about, in the end, you talk about physiology, aren't you?
Yeah.
How does Louis Armstrong exactly move his tongue and his larynx and his diaphragm and stuff to make a certain sound? We don't really know. You make your best estimate of how to make that sound. And certain sounds that Louis Armstrong makes, I've kind of tried to listen to it as hard as I could and emulate it. And the physiology of it, it feels very different in your body to try and play like Louis Armstrong or some of those players from the 20s, 30s, 40s than it does to play bebop. It actually makes you feel emotionally, of course it does, but physically is a different feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you at home wondering why Pete has a Neil Armstrong poster on the wall, it's not a Neil Armstrong poster. It's in fact a Louis Armstrong poster.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Which is he's endorsed by Louis Armstrong Posters Incorporated. That's why he's talking so much.
Yeah, I'm just a corporate shell,
So I want to jump into another piece of music that Pete sent over earlier, and this is something that is a tune that he showed me a long time ago that was sung by the great Billie Holiday, and it was actually her birthday yesterday, and she was heavily influenced by Louis Armstrong and a big Louis Armstrong fan. And this is called One Never Knows, Does One? Darcy, you have that one?
One never knows, does one, when love will come along. But then so suddenly life turns out to be a song. One never knows, does one, the moment or the place Right before your eyes, someone occupies your embrace. Someday, look and you'll find two hearts were blessed. Someday, fate may be kind, and pray for the future, and hope for the best. One never knows, does one? But that's just the way it goes. Then all at once you hear, hold me, caress me, and then love may come. But when, one never knows.
Check. And we're live back at 5 with Pete. And Pete is still hearing voices in his head, but he's feeling better about it. What are you hearing now, Pete?
Yeah, some kind of I think it's like who's Marquis Smith? Darcy will know this.
I've got no idea who Marquis Smith is.
Okay.
I'm a
Something
traitor
like
to
The
my
Fall,
generation.
that's it. Something like that.
Oh,
This is
Mark
just-
E. Smith. Okay, I thought it might have been a rapper or something.
This is the iPad getting you back for
It's all right. It's not too loud. I can hear it. I can hear you.
so singing, you know, Pete, this is not something that's new to you, and it's a great skill that you have. But did you grow up singing, or where did you grow up, and how did that come?
Yeah, I my two main things growing up were doing because I'm from West Yorkshire, which is the nearest town was Wakefield, and yeah, I grew up doing brass bands up there, which is tied to the mining communities in West Yorkshire, and well, all around the UK, but a lot in Yorkshire. And also, I was a chorister in a cathedral choir as well, both of which are amazing training grounds for musicians. Really, I mean, the players in the brass bands, some of the quite often, if you look at the principal trumpet players of major symphony orchestras and principal brass players, they're often from a brass banding background.
Like Mike Lovett is from that thing, right? Isn't he?
I think he is, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think so.
north.
Yeah, and many other people. And it's an amazing. It's amazing to see, artistic endeavor of the very, very highest level from people who are working, not just 9 to 5, but more than 9 to 5 in real hard jobs.
Right.
Obviously heavy industry, up to the 70s and the 80s when that disappeared. So the people were still continuing to play. The people that I knew growing up were regular jobs, what anyone else does, electricians, teachers, and everything else under the sun, that could play cornet. I mean, as a kid, I thought I was a real hot shot. I suppose like a lot of us did when we were 14, 15. And I was the lowest of the low in the brass band. Third cornet, and there was a lot of cornets, so it was I was right at the back of the line, just chugging along and trying to learn from everybody else. And the standard is insane. You wouldn't believe, and these people just do it for fun and for pride. And the singing, yeah. Cathedral choirs again are a thing like particular to the UK, and are an amazing professional, really near enough professional level choirs, professional level singers singing choral music like howls and Darufle Foray, English and basically English and European choral music. And by the time you're kind of 12 or 13, you can sight read anything, that really pretty much anything they put in front of you. just because the training's so good. And at that age, I don't know about you, but you when you're so young, you're just a sponge,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
aren't you,
Things just go in
for
so
learning
quick.
information.
Yeah.
So they put these things in front of you, and you don't know whether they're hard, easy, or whatever. You just get on with it and learn it. And you know, yeah. So that was
I was a
my
sponge
that was.
for everything that wasn't math.
Oh, me too.
Math didn't go in.
Maths.
It was my sponge was immune to math.
Okay.
But I'm hoping to improve my sponge.
Well, they say maths and music are supposed to go together, but I think that's bullshit.
I'm gonna have to agree with you there.
Because I am. I mean, it's sad. You know, really, really sad.
We should have a segment of the show where we just give people math problems to do.
Oh, don't do that. That's like a nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So what we were talking about when Pete was playing that that unaccompanied version of the Billie Holiday tune, what's it called? One Never Knows.
One Never Knows does one.
It's confusing for me because there's a Fats Waller tune called One Never Knows Do One.
One Never Knows Do One,
which is, you know. Oh, incidentally, well, we'll get to that later. We were talking about keeping time when you're playing by yourself. You know, when you're a solo instrumentalist playing by yourself, how do you play?
Well, I think is that not a question that's alongside how do you play time when you're playing with other people? Because really, we're going to be playing with other people most of the time, or at least you'd hope so. And I think playing in certain styles that me and you've played in together for a number of years require, or at least in my opinion, require group ownership and individual ownership over the time. So that means not letting, for instance, the rhythm section keep the time, and then which enables you to
slack off.
Yeah, slack off, or play in a way where the time isn't stated. Because there is some great music that is like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like great rhythm sections playing great time with someone on top of them where time is not high in their criteria of what they're trying to express, or
well, there's a lot of jazz. There's a lot of jazz like that.
Yeah, right. And intentionally so, as in, for instance, they're more interested. They're trying to express something where, for instance, I don't know, sheets of sound, sheets of harmonic data, where a strict feeling of time that locks in it's not as important, you know.
Right.
But in certain musics, and you know, we all specialize in one thing or another, don't we? It is important, and that's like older styles of jazz, blues, Dixieland, swing, bebop. You know, if you're not taking ownership of the time yourself, playing in time, driving that time forward, you know, or sitting on it, or whatever you're trying to do with it, being in control, basically, of it. It's not gonna, in my opinion, it's not gonna sound. It tends to not sound great, I think. So when you're playing by yourself, like at home, it's important to feel a pulse in exactly the same way that you would, and keep the time in exactly the same way you would playing with anybody else, you know.
Yeah, I totally, and I get that when I play in a group with you. I can't remember who it was, but it was a long time ago. I can remember somebody telling me that it's everybody's responsibility to keep their own time in a band. It's not the drummer's responsibility. Just because the drummer plays a beat doesn't mean that you don't have to internalize the time feel. And the other thing I want to clarify about what time feel is, it's not actually because I do a lot of practice with a metronome, and it's funny, having good time doesn't necessarily mean that your performance is metronomic. It doesn't mean that everything is right in a four kind of structure, but it does mean that what you're playing feels like it's being phrased. You listen to it and it feels like a piece of music, don't you think?
Yeah, well, that's control, isn't it? It's like Billie Holiday, that's another or Henry Red. Well, let's say Billie Holiday. It's really people like Steve Coleman, who is obviously very interested in rhythm and playing in time. If
Mm.
there's anyone that is, it's him. He's written articles about Billie Holiday. He's analysed Billie Holiday, and we think of Billie Holiday as this kind of, she's certainly whatever the opposite of metronomic is. It's like the
Absolutely.
ultimate style floating above the time. But it's
But that doesn't mean she doesn't have good time.
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, that's an indication. It sounds so good. That's an indication of like perfect control over it. You don't even notice it. It locks in some way so tightly that it as you say, it becomes just a feature of the great music that you're listening to, rather than thinking, oh, this is very in time,
Right,
which is
right.
something I would never. You don't put on a good record and think this is very in time, and that's why I
Right.
like it. Well, hopefully not.
We're going to put on another of Pete's solo performances from earlier, and this similarly exemplifies that kind of overriding time feel, and it's a great old tune called the Muskrat Ramble. The Muskrat Ramble. You're live at 5 with Pete Horsfall. We're back with Pete Horsfall. That was the Muskrat Ramble, and we're nearing the end of the show. So we wanted to share with you the record of the day, which is something that we're going to start putting in every day, so that you have something to listen to when we're not on air. And the record of the day, Pete, you'll be happy to know, is the record with that Bobby Hackett tune on it.
Oh, it's rubbish, that one.
It's a great record.
I'm only kidding. Yeah, it's good.
Ultimate. It's a great record with a bad title. It's called Jazz Ultimate.
Jazz Ultimate.
And it also has a really confusing track list, because there are 2 repeat titles that are different songs. So there's Swonderful and It's Wonderful.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, which is great, But anyway, Darcy, can we show people the cover of that record?
Up in your left-hand corner.
It's up in my left-hand corner.
So give it a point.
That's how you get all the bases covered.
Yeah, see, I can never get it right, Yeah, so if you do check that out on Spotify, remember to follow our Live at 5 playlist. I'll be adding a couple of tracks from that record to it, and other tracks from interviews we've had over the past couple of weeks. Pete Horsfall, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure. Yeah. And what else can we say? I guess stay healthy, and hopefully we can reconvene and do another one of these at some point.
Great. Yeah,
cool. Great. Well, Darcy, let's play this is another archive piece from Smitty's Big Four. Pete, you'll like this one, because this is actually from the first live gig at Kansas Smitty's. This was Smitty's
Wow.
Big Four. Yeah. It's amazing I'm telling you, it's amazing going back through all this stuff, you know, the stories that come to mind and all the, I mean, the gigs that we've done. And I mean, there was one point in time when Pete and I were playing, you know, 10, 12 gigs a week together. And some of those we'd be wearing, you know, Hawaiian shirts and Panama hats and playing requests at the Saratoga racetrack, which, let me tell you, is about as glamorous as it gets.
Well, I knew my career had peaked at that point. So
oh man. So as I said, this is the Maple Leaf Rag, and we'll be back tomorrow with Nick Lewis, who is the operations manager at Ronnie Scott's, and I'm sure he'll have some interesting stories to share with us. So tune in, and remember to follow this YouTube channel and to click on the link in our bio to find out more about what we're doing. Great. Have a great night and enjoy the Maple Leaf Rag. Thanks so much.
One, two, cut.
Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to this channel and click on the link in the description to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merch. See you tomorrow. Thanks again.